Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening, and welcome to Spirit Radio with your host, Willie Hassel. Ghosts, spirits, hauntings. This is the show where we take you on a journey. A journey into the unknown, where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness, where reality becomes a thin line. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. Okay, welcome once again to Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience. Ghosts, spirits, UFOs, Bigfoot, nothing is off limits. This is the show where the paranormal becomes the normal. I am your host, Willie Hassel, the gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And as always, joining me in the studio is my co-host, the lovely, the mystical, the mysterious Lynne Nickerson.
Well, good evening, Willie.
Good evening, Lynn, and how are you doing tonight?
Oh, just great. We've got a wonderful show ahead of us tonight, don't we?
We do. Did you happen to meet the weather elf on your way out, on your way in the studio?
You know, I did. She had the cutest little outfit on.
I thought so. I thought she was very adorable.
Yeah, very Christmassy. I'm going to chase her and see if I can't find out where she got that suit.
Yeah, there you go. Why don't you do that? Well, we do have a very special guest tonight, and hopefully through the miracle of Skype, when I push the button, hopefully he will be there. And we are going to be talking to him all the way from England, and I am dialing him up right now. And born in Nottinghamshire, England, during his early life, he spent much of his time at the local library reading up on the subject of the paranormal. In later years, he developed an interest in human behavior and many questions about the mind and its capabilities. Kell's first book, Telephone Calls from the Dead, received much media attention after he received the Eileen Garrett Scholarship from the Parapsychology Foundation in 2009. Kell holds a B.S. with honors in psychology from the University of Northampton and a master's in research Psychology from Sheffield Hallam University. He is a recipient of the Alex Tanous Scholarship Award from the Alex Tanous Foundation for Scientific Research in 2011 and 12. He is currently based at Northampton University pursuing doctoral research in psychology and parapsychology. He is also a lecturer at the university on parapsychology, thanatology, I don't even know what that one is, and ancient mysticism. He is a member of the Society for Psychical Research and the Parapsychological Association. He is the author of 2 books, Telephone Calls from the Dead and Conversations with Ghosts. And that is just a short version, and hopefully there is still time left in the hour to please welcome, and I hope he is there, Cal Cooper.
Hi, Willie. How's it going?
Hi, Cal. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
We are so glad to hear your voice there, Cal. We've been having trouble with this Skype business.
Yes.
Oh, no problem. I can just about hear you fine.
Okay, well, we'll try to talk loud enough for you to hear us. So anyway, we welcome you to the show, Cal.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. 2 a.m. here, so it's all sleepy land. I've got my eyes
2
wide
o'clock.
open now.
I
I've
know.
got the matchstick out there, putting my eyes open.
Well, that's why we would have felt terrible if the Skype hadn't worked and you stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning and then nothing happened.
No, we got it right. We got it right.
You would have been very upset with us.
Well, how did you like your intro?
It's always a long one, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Some people always try to get their tongue around the department that I work for at the University of Northampton, the Centre for the Study of Anomalous Psychological Processes.
Whoa.
I didn't even attempt that one.
No, we just call it CSAP for short. That's the,
okay.
It's good.
Right.
Good
Okay.
acronyms.
All right. So it's great to have you on the show, Cal.
Yes,
And,
we both listened to your programs last night. Last night, wasn't it?
A couple of nights ago, a couple of shows that you were on.
Both the TV and the radio show. Very interesting.
Oh, okay.
We had to do our research, do our homework. So tell me, first of all, though, Cal, how is that new motorcycle doing?
Sorry, said that again.
I said, first of all, how is that new motorcycle doing?
Oh, the new motorcycle. Oh, that's absolutely fine. I mean, we've got some really cold weather coming in at the moment, being Christmas, so
Yeah.
I've had to go down and keep on firing it up just to keep the battery going.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of storms out there. In England,
Actually, it's a bungalow that we own, so just a ground floor house, and where I keep the bike, which is just down the road. The house is vacant because we rent it out, but I keep the bike in the garage there. And the wind was so bad the other day, the fence to the main backyard has blown down and it's taken the gate with it.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
I've had to try and fix that as best as I could today, so people don't just wander around the back of the house. But the wind's been so bad on the university the other day. Some of the main trees that we've got there, they're at least 100 foot high, massive, old things.
Wow,
They put a load of tape around them, and then about 6 security guards had to come out and guard them. Make sure no students walked over there just in case they blew down.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
really.
awful. I hate to have trees blown over.
I know it.
I hate to lose trees.
I can just picture you out terrorizing the English countryside on that motorcycle with your full set of leathers on there.
Now, you'd stay off the road when it's black ice, okay?
Oh, yes. No, not going out in the frosty weather. Totally.
Right.
Okay.
I'll stick with the car. The car has a heater.
Yeah, there you go. Nice and warm in there. So, Cal, first of all, for those listeners who don't know or don't really understand, what exactly does a parapsychologist do?
What does a parapsychologist do? Well, a parapsychologist is essentially a psychologist that looks at exceptional human experiences and or abilities. So this could involve anything from testing someone, putting someone to the test that claims that they have psychic abilities. This could be anything from claiming that they can talk to the dead, to predict future events, or maybe affect people or the environment with their mind, such as bending metal. And also we look at exceptional experiences, and this could be anything from people that say that they've seen ghosts or they've witnessed a haunting, so going to that haunted location, to all other kinds of things, such as out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and so forth. We've got 3 main areas that we look at, and that's ESP, which looks at clairvoyance, seeing information at distance. telepathy, mind-to-mind interaction, and precognition, seeing future events. PK, psychokinesis, so that's the metal bending and being able to affect the environment or people with your mind. And survival. And survival is usually anything that suggests that the mind can operate outside of the body or beyond bodily death. So that would be out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, apparitions, ghosts and hauntings, some aspects of the mediumship, and maybe even cases of reincarnation, or possibly the telephone call from the dead phenomena.
Cal, let me ask you this. Now, being a psychologist, you studied psychology too, correct?
Yeah, that's my main ground and that's my main background. So first and foremost, I'm qualified as a psychologist.
Well, then my question next is, usually parapsychology in the world of the universities is considered sort of like fringe science. So it's taken seriously in England, isn't it?
It's still very mixed opinion, really. I mean, we have about at least a dozen universities within the UK that cater for parapsychology. And that could be anything from offering a second or typically a third-year module in parapsychology, which a psychology student can take on within their degree, to then also having staff that teach it or are at the university within the department who have a background in parapsychology who can supervise a final year dissertation on a parapsychological topic. And then in some cases we've had master's degrees.
Wow.
We've had at the University of Northampton a master's degree where you can take on a module of parapsychology, but with our other masters in parapsychology, other masters in psychology, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that because we have specialist staff. But the Coventry University had a whole MSc just in parapsychology.
Wow, and you can get credit for it. Can you get a degree in it, or it's like a sub-degree?
They only had that for 6 years. I mean, apart from that, the main thing that everyone does is they get a good grounding in another field. You'll get a main psychology degree or an anthropology degree or a physics degree or sociology, theology, philosophy, whatever you want. And typically people go on to do a whole PhD that incorporates some large parapsychological aspect. So my own PhD is quite heavy on parapsychology while incorporating thanatology and also positive psychology.
Okay, then my question is, did you experience any resistance in trying to do the 2 books that you worked on?
Any resistance in doing them?
Yes, from let's say mainstream education, academia, mainstream academia.
No, I mean, my university being the main research centre for parapsychology in the world at the moment, it was incredibly welcoming in the fact that I was doing such research.
Terrific, okay.
When Telephone Calls from the Dead came out, they were over the moon and I got a lot of publicity for it. And with this new book that's come out, again, it's just been exactly the same. They're very pleased. They wish I'd focused on my PhD a bit more and got a bit more of that done rather than writing books.
Oh, there's time for that.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, there's time for that. I mean, it's worth going off and dabbling with all these little different projects now and then. So long as I stay focused, I'm back on the PhD. I'm literally sat surrounded by paperwork right now for the PhD.
Study, huh?
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, that's all it is. Well, both books are very interesting. They both have some great information in them. Whoops, are you still there? Okay. Your picture just changed. Now I can actually see you.
Oh, there we go. Hello.
I thought maybe I lost you for a second there.
No, you got me.
Okay.
Someone is calling in, but we can never hear any voices.
Okay. We're just having a little phone issue here.
Yeah, let me just mention that we seem to have phone interest, but there's no one on the line. So
maybe it's do you think it might be a ghost, Cal?
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It's a dead line.
It's a paranormal line. Let me ask you before I forget here. In the introduction, it said one of the things that you lecture in, if I am even saying this right, thanology or tanology?
Thanatology.
Thanatology.
That word actually is more commonly used in the USA. We rarely use it over here, but I just use it because it sums it up easier than saying studying death, dying, and bereavement. That's what it is. Death, dying, and bereavement.
Okay. All right.
Thanatology sums it up in one. You have quite a few universities over there that focus on it. We have very few, if any, universities over here that have main study programs or degrees in death, dying, and bereavement. If you go to the Open University here, which is very popular. The Open University is a distance learning university up and down the country. And I think internationally as well, some people can do some stuff with it. But they specialise, they have specialist staff for death, dying and bereavement. But again, that's only for a research master's or a PhD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's places in the US, I've forgotten the actual college or university, but they have an entire master's program in thanatology. There's some really different masters here and there and everywhere that are really interesting that I'd love to take on. I think everyone would. They have to be sort of popular and eye-catching, and
I had never seen that word before, and I didn't know what it was. So I said, I'll ask Cal. he will know.
But they don't offer that here. I mean, I think that England is much more open to that sort of thing in the university system than we are here in the States. To even
the United States may be more open to death, dying, and bereavement.
Just parapsychology in general, studying it.
All right.
UCLA, they had a really nice parapsychology. They've had one for a long time, but I think they're the only one in the States. One of the only ones, anyway. It's just not a common thing at the university level. Like the University of New Hampshire, where I went, I would always look for books on ghosts. I was at the time I was a psychology major in my freshman year. There was nothing. It was like ghosts didn't exist, and they didn't have any books in the library on that subject at all. Nothing. If you can believe that. And to me, that's part of psychology.
Sometimes you have to dig really deep to find books on the paranormal.
Well, they still don't
modern
carry
ones, they're all over the place. But when it comes to the proper literature, I don't know if you can quite see it.
Cal has gotten up and left. He's walking somewhere.
He's walking from room to room aimlessly.
Yes, we can see him, even though nobody else can.
Yeah,
watching him take it.
Virtually every parapsychologist has got a massive collection of old books, and it really, it's the main thing that you've got to do if you're going to research it. It's all about reading, not studying necessarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
And every time we have a program called Universe Challenge, where they send two universities up against each other to actually answer loads of different questions. And it's usually the team that says that they're reading for a certain degree. They're usually the winning ones. The ones that say that they're studying, they tend to fail. There you go. I think you can see that better now, Willie. See, look, loads of hundreds and hundreds of books.
And you've read every one of them, right?
No, I haven't read everyone. They're certainly all useful for reference. Every library that I've been in, I would argue that every book is worth its weight in gold, because one day you'll need a reference and the book will be there.
Yeah.
So you don't need to read it. There'll probably be a sentence or a paragraph within it that eventually you'll need.
Yeah. We do keep getting phone calls here. I don't know, were you able to connect on this one?
No, I couldn't. Okay. Why don't you check the switch over there? In the meantime, I've got a question for
Yeah, okay.
Cal.
Well, I was just going to ask Cal, if we do get a phone call, do you want to take some calls tonight? Or?
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, okay. I don't believe that you can hear anything that's going over the air, so I'll probably have to relay the question to you.
Okay, yeah,
so
that's fine.
I think all you can hear is just us two.
Okay.
So, okay, and Lynn, you had a question.
Yes. Congratulations on both those books. They are very interesting, Cal. I was reading Conversations with Ghosts today.
Oh, this one.
And yes. Yeah. With Alex Tennis and Callamy Cooper. And he was a fascinating man. I'm really psychic. And one of the things he was trying to explain the difference between the soul and the spirit. Now, what is your interpretation of that in regards to time frames, time dimensions? And I'll kind of give you my feedback after you say something.
Alex had a very theological and philosophical take on soul, spirits, and ghosts. So there's a whole chapter there that discusses his thoughts and opinion on that. And he also had very detailed opinions on what a soul was or a spirit was compared to a ghost and how they operated. He often kept on talking about ghosts that replay certain events and saying it was very much like stepping into a movie and watching it play out.
And he's equating that with spirit, right?
Sorry, say that again?
He's equating that with spirit, ghosts and spirits.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
In my own opinion, I've always kind of grouped soul spirit, mind, consciousness all into one. Though we can understand that different religions have seen it different way. Alex Tanos was a big fan of Egypt and also their religious traditions going back to ancient times. And the ancient Egyptians believed that when we die, the body splits into three different things. So not just body and soul. It splits into the heart, which is the bar. The bar goes off into the afterlife and goes onto the path of judgment. We have the car, which is our ghost and our actual physical double that comes out and haunts and stays physically located to the body in close proximity and haunts around the tomb. And the coup travels out and travels the land like an astral body that can remote view or go miles and miles and see different things and travels. And it's just a white mist or a grey mist. Again, in my own mind as a psychologist, I would just see that there's just mind and body, and mind can be called whatever you like. But Alex didn't like that. Quite a few times when they were testing him for this out-of-body capability, Dr. Carlos Osis would refer to it as Alex's soul leaving the body, and they were actually trying to measure his soul. And he said, no, Dr. Osis, that isn't right. You're not measuring my soul. If my soul leaves my body, then I'm dead. You're measuring my consciousness, my mind.
And my personality.
He believed it to be something completely different.
And he referred to that as Alex too, right?
As what, sorry? Yeah, Alex too.
Alex too.
Yeah.
Alex too was his absolute double, because when he did astral travel, in some cases, people would see an absolute double of Alex. And this is what we call a bilocation, when you're reported to be in two places at once. Your physical body is actually somewhere, and your astral traveling body is witnessed by other people. But no one would ever know because it appears solid, it has your characteristics, so it looks like you, it acts like you.
It is within our 3D time frame, whereas the soul portion, when they keep repeating the same thing over and over again, it seems like they are in a time zone that does not interface with the here and now. They are in another time frame, so that they can't seem to communicate with, say, like another ghost that we might be seeing that is a spirit. So the spirit and a ghost, a spirit and a soul from the past, they cannot connect because of the difference in the time dimensions. That's the implication that I understand.
Well, that was a different chapter within the book for Conversations with Ghosts. That's when Alex went to haunted locations and he discovered that you could have a couple living in that house.
And
one of them dies and promises to remain around and wait for them, and the other person carries on living there and experiences some haunting phenomena associated with the other person. When they eventually die, say some 20 or 30 years later, Alex would go in and witness both of their spirits still around as ghosts, but noted that they could never find each other because they died at different time periods.
Yeah, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, that was his belief, because he'd go into houses which he called them, said they had multiple layers, as though each time frame has a sort of cut-off point, and that's when it skips to a new layer. And nothing can seem to interact with each other because of that. It causes a separation within the fabric of the building and the location.
Yep, that blows my mind.
But he acted as a psychic counsellor, as it were, and he often called it ghost counselling or psychic counselling because he could actually become the bridge, the medium, in which they could actually communicate with each other, these two ghosts that couldn't really find each other. He would use his own methods of altering his state of consciousness to focus on the building and speak to both of them and reunite them. So he called this continuing bonds, or I renamed the chapter so it was a bit clearer. But it was talking about people that knew each other, both of them dying eventually, and not being able to meet in the afterlife unless he kind of helped them to kind of rejoin things.
Yep.
Well, the phone keeps ringing here, Cal. I think a lot of people want to talk to you, but every time I answer it, there's nobody there.
What about the other switch?
So I don't know. I think we're just going to have to give up on that. And
well,
if anybody is thinking about calling, I guess we're not going to be able to take your call.
They could always put a message on your Facebook page.
They can do that.
Or the radio station, too. WSCA-FM.
Well, I'm just looking now. They could put a message on Cal Cooper Parapsychologist Facebook page, and I can check on there, see if there are any questions.
Well, that would be excellent.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And when we come up on the break here in a couple minutes, we'll have a few minutes. I'll bring up my Facebook page, and then if anybody wants to leave a message on there. And,
okay, I've left that open just in case people want to send messages to Cal Cooper, Parapsychologist on Facebook.
Okay. All right. So, as far as the OBE, could you talk a little bit about what Alex called the black box?
The black box is what we call a perception lab in
like a
modern psychology.
psychomantian?
No.
Not like that?
It's literally an isolation booth. Instead of a psychomantium we use to kind of promote visual stimuli in terms of we mainly use them for sort of the bereavement research because it's a room full of reflective mirrors or reflective surfaces. The perception lab that we have at the university, we have two of them, is a soundproof booth that has metal-lined walls, and we have them installed into the building. You wouldn't know that they're just a box within the building. They seem like another room, but they're soundproof, and I think they block out a certain level of EMF and radio waves and so forth.
Sure.
And anyway, very little can kind of get into the room and distract a person while they're in there. So we use them for altering someone's state of consciousness. They relax in a big leather chair, and we typically use them for Gansfeld to get people to promote their telepathic abilities or remote view, depending on whatever we're testing. Mm-hmm. And the black box that Alex was using was virtually the same. They had a room like that at the American Society for Psychical Research, and it was a room with some comfy mattress on the floor, some pillows. Alex would go and lie down there in the dark, relax his arms, relax his legs, and getting to an altered state of consciousness where he was forgetting the body, he was trying not to focus on any bodily sensations, relaxing his breathing and trying to focus his thoughts inwards so he could really concentrate on these psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, he's a psychic doing it, so hopefully his results will be better than anyone else. We just take any average Joe off the street when it comes to psychology and parapsychology testing, and we say, well, if we take an average population, within that we will find that some people will have better dormant psychic abilities when put to the test than others. So we will just look at a random sample of the population and still find that putting someone into one of these black boxes, the isolation lab, and changing their state of consciousness, we can promote these dormant senses. And we found that with dreaming. Dreaming can still promote precognitive experiences. Psychedelic reactants, that can do it as well. Meditation. So many different things that change the way you actually see the world. Or you try and focus your thoughts inwards. You know, even with dreams, you're in an unconscious state, but you're still focusing on these internal thought patterns and producing psychic phenomena, psychic experiences, and psychically gained information.
And that's
so
because
that's what
deprivation of the stimuli, that is what promotes it, do you think?
Well, deprivation is shutting you off from focusing on all the things that are around you via our sight and sound and so forth. There are so many things going on around us that we don't recognize because we're actually acting off these heightened senses of being aware of everything normally. We're never aware of the subtle things that are going on. You know, physics can tell us what's going on. You know, we'll be in a room and we might register a slight change in temperature, but we can't accurately say how much it's dropped in temperature. Something else can tell us, but that's, you know, temperature's going on all around us. Radio waves are all around us all the time. EMF is around us all the time. Infrasound is around us all the time. We can't really sort of detect and accurately say just with our body how that's actually acting and operating. And at the same time, if there is anything psychic going on, if we're just going about our day-to-day lives, we'll only experience a glimpse of that spontaneously, and that's how these experiences occur. So by taking one of these labs and putting someone into sensory isolation, we will get them to completely focus their thoughts inwards and say anything that comes to mind. And when we have people remote viewing, they seem to be constantly churning out some really good, accurate information that leads to whatever target that they're going to focus on. Compared to just, say, getting them to sit down and go through some remote viewing techniques, you'll only find that 1% of people out of that population will get anything right. But we seem to reach a good significance level, or beyond significant, beyond what chance would expect when we put them in the lab and we alter their state of conscious awareness.
A psychically sterile atmosphere.
Yeah, kind of like me. You brought up something that I was going to ask you about, out-of-body experience and remote viewing. Are they two entirely different things? They the same thing, or are they close?
That's a good question.
I've considered them slightly different. I always say to the students at the university, you can consider them as 4 different levels. If we have clairvoyance on the top, clairvoyance is normally associated with mediums, but its definition is seeing information at distance. So if you had something in a sealed box, I could tell you what was inside that box. You'd put something in there and didn't tell me. I can see that information at distance. I just know. And then below that we have remote viewing. So in my mind, I travel to that location, I think about it, and I try and picture it in my head. So that's getting a bit more. I'm actually trying to focus a bit more on where I'm traveling to.
Yeah.
If we break that down even more, we get to out-of-body experiences, and that's where, in an out-of-body state, I feel that I am actually traveling to that location. It's not in my mind. I feel that I'm traveling to that location. And then beyond that is astral projection. So if you want to split them all up, I mean, some people consider them all the same, especially remote viewing, OBE, and astral projection.
Yeah.
Astral projection could be a step further, because a lot of times when it's defined as astral traveling, people see that by location. So if I said I'm going to astral project to where you guys are right now, then hopefully you'd be able to see either an apparition of me or some sort of strange mist or shape representative of the mind or consciousness having travelled to you. So not only have I separated my mind, I've actually sent a part of it there, or the whole thing has left my body. My physical state is still here, but it's not consciously aware anymore. I'm in this Cal 2 sort of state, and
Cal
it's coming
2,
to
yeah.
you.
So would the astral projection be interactive, or would it just be existing?
In some cases, the astral projection and this bilocation is interactive. Certainly in the cases discussed of Alex Tannis, Alex too was always consciously aware. His physical body was never active or consciously aware. It could only just speak sometimes and relay information.
So was
and
was that OBE,
certainly
or
in the
was
better
that...
cases, sorry?
I'm sorry, was that OBE that Alex did, or was that considered astral projection?
I think it was a mixture of both. I mean, when they tested him at the American Society for Psychical Research, they were trying to see if, one, he could actually see these targets in a different room that were 4 rooms away, and he could. At the same time, they were using strain gauges to see if they could actually measure any changes within the environment around the optical illusion box. And at periods of high hit rate, so a cluster of getting things right in a row, the strain gauge started to become very active, suggesting that something was there. So they were assuming that was this essence that they were measuring, but nothing was physically seen. So that's the big difference between these bilocations, because something is clearly seen. The best case discussed in the book is when he was asleep in New York and his friend in Canada met him at the door, and he came in and had a cup of tea and left. I mean, that's full-blown interaction right there, and seeing something.
At that point, Cal, if his friend wanted to reach out and touch him, could he have done that or not? Would there have been something to touch?
Well,
or would it kind of like putting your hands through something?
It just depends on that guy's account of what Alex did. I mean, did Alex actually have his cup of tea, or was it just left and they end up speaking to each other? I mean, if he had a cup of tea, that's remarkable. I mean, it says in the account that he did. And there are some rare cases, especially if you read a book called Apparitions by G.N.M. Tyrrell, who gave a guest lecture to the SPR in 1943 and then reproduced it as a book in 1953. And it was an account of looking at a few hundred cases of apparitions. And in a few of those, he talked about apparitions that seemed to display a physical presence. There was 2 sisters staying in a castle one night somewhere in the UK. They both woke at night to find this apparition of a knight stood at the end of the bed, which had been reported being seen there before. One of the women sisters was so scared she kind of just sat there and watched it, while the other one had a bit more confidence about it, and she actually reached out and grabbed it and reported grabbing the arm of this apparition. She described it being really cold but absolutely solid, but it pulled away with more force than she could actually hold on to, and as it got to the door it just faded out through the door rather than actually having any physical presence by the time it got to the door. So it had this semi-physical presence. She could grab it, yet its exit was to dissolve away. It didn't walk, open the door and leave, which we could then argue, well, maybe it was just a guy dressed in knight's armor, and it wasn't really a ghost. Who knows?
Well, we're at the bottom of the hour, so...
Yeah, actually, we're past the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a short break here, Cal.
Just a quick break, Cal.
And you got about 4 minutes, and we'll be back.
Okay.
And this is Spirit Radio, and we're talking to Cal Cooper, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Well, welcome back. This is Portsmouth Community Radio, WSCA 106.1 FM. From the City of Portsmouth newsletter, Fuel Assistance Program is available. Fuel assistance benefits are available to homeowners or renters during the winter heating season through Rockingham Community Action. Eligibility and benefit amounts are determined by gross household income for a 30-day period going back from the appointment day, household size, and annual heating costs. The program may also pay a portion of your rent if heat is included in the rent and if the rent is unsubsidized. For more information, the contact is 603-436-3896 or online at rcaction.org. And we've got a list here of upcoming shows and our guests. And on December 14th, we're going to have Kathleen Marden in our studios here. She's a UFO researcher and author of the Alien Abduction Files, and she is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. And she also came out, her first book was Captured. On the 21st of December, we are going to have cryptozoologist and Bigfoot researcher Lyle Blackburn. He was been recently highlighted on a TV show, Finding Bigfoot, and he'll be here to talk about his new book, and that is titled The Beast of Boggy Creek. Then on the 28th of December, we have a local medium. Her name is Mary Lou Marion, and she'll be here in the studio, and she'll be talking about what it means to be a medium, and she will be taking phone calls from the listeners. So she also does aura readings too, and she wanted to talk about that and give the audience some information about auras. So be sure to stay tuned for Mary Lou.
Okay, and you are listening to Spirit Radio, and now we are back with Cal Cooper, who has been showing us on the screen here some of his book collection.
Yours rivals mine, Cal. I have an extensive parapsychology book collection.
A weaponry collection as well.
What was that?
Oh, cool. Weapons.
Oh, weapons. What type?
And,
Swords
I think those
and
are my two guilty pleasures: old books and old weapons.
Old books.
Old
and
weapons.
Old weapons.
Yeah, I find old weapons fascinating too. Really old weapons, and then old castles, and all of the artillery that they use. I think is fascinating.
Yeah, I was at Chillingham Castle with Norrie Miles and Kieran O'Keefe, and there was an event up there for Diabetes UK, and they got loads of people from the charity to come up for a big ghost hunt there. And in the main hall, they got basically a tub full of old weapons. Some were on the wall, but they got this massive handheld mace, and it had a sort of handguard, just like a sword. The sheer weight of this thing was incredible.
They
also had this big sort of wooden log that was twisted at the end on the table. And I was curious as to what it was. I mean, it looked like you just basically hit someone over the head with it, but the guy who ran the place, it was the caretaker, he said, they used to give this to the priest or the holy man after the battle, because in some parts of the battle or wars that took place wherever this had come from, they couldn't take casualties. There was no one to look after them. So at the end of the battle, they just took this log about and just basically knocked off anyone that was still alive.
Oh, my God. You know, that has rings of Native American history, because they have a club-type thing with like a large ball on the end of it. And it was,
yeah,
of course,
that's right.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it's similar to that. This one was very crude, though. I've seen some with some brilliant carvings in the end that are beautiful. But this one was just crude beyond belief.
A bit macabre.
You know, you guys have got all the coolest old castles.
Cool stuff.
All the coolest old castles and places over there for ghost hunting.
There's one on every street.
One on every street, one on every corner, huh? I got to get over there one of these days and check out.
It's where I go for my
places.
Milk and bread every day, and the newspaper. Just I have to wait for the drawbridge to come down.
Wait for the drawbridge to come down. Go and get a loaf of bread. Yeah. So anyways, back to Conversations with Ghosts.
Yep.
One of our American most famous hunting episodes was the Amityville Horror. And Dr. Tanous didn't seem to agree with that.
He didn't seem to think that it was authentic.
No, absolutely not. When Amityville came about, obviously it started off with the book, and then shortly after the book, the film adaptation was created. And the whole haunting centered around this family called the Lutz family.
Right.
And various things went on. There was this whole idea about a murder or several murders that had taken place within the building beforehand, which had led to these unpleasant happenings when this family moved in. Everything from subtle kind of things going on that led people to kind of question their own sanity, all the way up to seeing ghosts and poltergeist activity, and then in the film some really extreme stuff happening, windows smashing open, lights and blood splatters, whatever
Bugs
else.
on the windows.
Right.
Your classic kind of haunted movie, whatever. That whole thing came about, but still we have this actual building in the USA that is allegedly this big Amityville haunting thing, and everyone's hyped up about this whole idea about the film and so forth. So when this came about, the American Society for Psychical Research and the Psychical Research Foundation of North Carolina were both very interested. The Psychical Research Foundation at the time was run by a gentleman called Dr. William Roll, and Dr. William Roll was the main author of The Poltergeist. Nothing to do with the film. He was the author of the book The Poltergeist, which was very popular.
Okay.
He was a leading expert within parapsychology on poltergeist phenomena and looking at poltergeists and apparitions and whether they suggest any form of survival of death. And he wanted to investigate Amityville, but he was too busy, so he sent along Dr. Keith Harary and also Jerry Solvin as well. And Keith Harary did a lot of research with the American Society for Psychical Research, but he couldn't make it at the time. Dr. Jerry Solvin was coming over to New York around the period that Alex Tanous and Carlos Osis also got invited to go and check it out. So they end up, all three of them, meeting together round about the Amity House. While Dr. Solvin was off talking to the family, and they weren't living in the house anymore, it was completely empty. Doctors Osis and Tanous got to go off to the house and check the whole place out. They did a full scan of the place, and Tanous kept on coming back to Osis saying, "What do you reckon to the place? I'm just not psychically getting anything." So we have one person here trying to be very objective, which was Dr. Carlos Osis, and look at things. Tanous was going around, as he did, trying to open himself up to the environment, and he said, "I'm getting nothing." Later on, they got to go and interview the family, and in the kitchen, I believe it was, Alex caught more than a glimpse of what appeared to be a contract regarding the book and the film, saying, more or less outlining the fact that they were being paid to keep the story of the haunting alive. They discussed this with Jerry Solvin as well, and he was more or less convinced as they were that the whole thing was a hoax that had been played out and been told to just keep going. The family had to keep it going. Later that day, when they went back to the house to give it a second look over, I think Ed and Lorraine Warren had just turned up with the news crews and newspaper reporters and whatever else. So Doctors Tanous and Osis and so on, they managed to creep out the back way and avoid all of the media stuff and get back to their own research departments, the ASPR and the Psychical Research Foundation, whereupon they reported back to their colleagues and all the other parapsychologists at the time, saying, you know, we don't need to look into this any further. It seems it's all an absolute hoax. So if you look through the parapsychological literature, all our main journals and stuff like that, there's really no main concentration on that house or its haunting because we knew what it was. We knew it was a hoax. But it's all thanks to Dr. Alex Tanous because he pointed out he was fair and honest with his psychic opinions. It wasn't haunted in his psychic opinion. He didn't even come up with names or, you know, say, oh, I'm getting some bad energy. He literally said, nothing. Nothing is here.
Well, as an addendum, as an addendum to that, Cal, Mr. Lutz had been on Coast to Coast AM, and this was after his wife had passed, and he still held that that house was a hellhole for them, and he was very distraught. He seemed mentally disturbed, you know, just emotionally distraught, and he, I think, has since passed as well. But until his dying day, he held that that place was just ruined their lives. So maybe it's just maintaining a hoax, I don't know.
I think you have to weigh up the whole thing that there was a contract and also what royalties did they get and cut out the book and the film, because it's still a very popular film to this day. Also, because of his status and who he was. It's a radio show, or it could be a TV show.
Yeah.
You get paid for such status to go on those shows.
Yeah.
And if you keep being adamant about the fact that such a place is haunted, then brilliant. People are going to keep wanting you on the TV. They might even want you to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much benefit that you can take out of faking a tragedy or something really bizarre and disturbing and playing on the fact that it was. I mean, maybe in their minds it was haunted, but maybe not on the level that's being portrayed in the book, and certainly not in the film. They might have had a few experiences that they associate as being haunting type phenomena. But when they sent in actual researchers and research teams, so people that were trained like Tanis and Osis and so forth, they were familiar with psychical research literature. They were familiar with the investigation of hauntings, and also mainly with people's psychology and their belief systems and how they acted on environments. They were adamant there was nothing there. They spent some time in there. Some people even went back a few times.
Really?
But when Ed and Lorraine Warren got there, they kind of made things a whole lot worse. Even Hans Holzer to some extent as well.
Hans Holzer went there as well and said he didn't feel anything?
Hans Holzer went there, and he did actually meet up with the Warrens a few times, but the Warrens did a lot of stuff independently, so they've only got themselves to blame. And there was people like Lloyd Auerbach. He wrote a brilliant book round about that time. Got it just here with the other Alex Tanner stuff. He wrote a book called ESP Hauntings and Poltergeists, a Parapsychologist Handbook. That was his very first book that came out in parapsychology, and it discusses it in quite a lot of detail. The talks that he'd had with Dr. Carlos Osis and Dr. Alex Tannis, his own opinions on Amityville. And I'm sure Lloyd won't mind me saying this, but later on, it was only a few years ago, maybe within the last 10 years, he went to a lecture that Lorraine was giving. And I think the audience were fairly sure that there were some things they found very captivating from her opinion and her personal experience, but at the same time, some things they weren't sure on. Lloyd being more or less an expert on that particular case, just because he was working in parapsychology at the time the Amityville case was an active, big media thing. Lloyd knew the ins and outs of it because he'd looked into it, and he'd also spoken to the people that went to investigate it. So some things that Lorraine brought up, he just knew, why she kind of relaying this to the audience. He wasn't happy with it, so he just sort of, actions speak louder than words. He walked out to the lecture, and that kind of said more than speaking his mind. It said so much more just walking out. And I really don't blame him. I think being in the same position, I probably would have done. If you'd said from day one, there is nothing going on, to then keep talking about it 20 or 30 years later as a researcher would really probably start to annoy you.
Well, we're not going to tell the public then.
No, we won't tell anybody.
Did you have another question?
It's important. That was a really interesting part of the book, Conversations with Ghosts, getting that chapter in there and talking about it specifically from Alex's point of view, because when you read all the other stuff on Amityville, it talks about these other researchers, typically the Warrens, maybe Hans Holzer, some researchers as well that you've never heard of before, or people calling themselves parapsychologists that weren't, because the term parapsychology in the media was getting very popular from loads of films adding in characters who were parapsychologists. So these were just your everyday amateur ghost hunters off the street that knew nothing about science or ghost hunting and calling themselves parapsychologists. So every Tom, Dick and Harry around that time was saying that they'd investigated Amityville, and that could have been anything from standing on the porch to having walked past it.
Elementary, my dear. Did you have a question?
No, I was going to say that we are
coming close to the hour.
Yeah, really quickly running out of time. Do you want to get into a little bit to the other book, Telephone Calls from the Dead? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we've got about 6 more minutes, Cal, and I've got a burning question for you. So,
a burning question.
It really is.
Okay.
In your research, I had a friend who had a dream once that it involved a Frederick Bligh Bond. Now, did you study Frederick Bligh Bond and his association with the search for the Glastonbury Chapel at Glastonbury? He was a member of the psychical research at the turn of the century, and he was hired by the architects to look for the foundation of the chapel at Glastonbury.
What was the name again?
Frederick Bligh Bond, and it's Bligh. Bond. He was an actual individual, but I had a friend who dreamt about him, and I was wondering if you had done any research on him.
No, sorry.
No,
really
you haven't heard of
ring a
him?
bell.
Okay.
Nope.
If you look him up, it's fascinating, but my friend had a dream of him, and they kept calling him Bligh, and he told me that I was a monk in this dream. So he did some research, and he went to the University of McGill University in Toronto, and he did some research, and he managed to uncover Bligh Bond, and he sincerely feels that he was the reincarnation of Frederick Bligh Bond, and that I was a monk there who helped deliver the information where the foundation of the chapel was.
Right.
So I found that fascinating. I was interested to know whether or not you had ever touched on that. But no, you haven't heard of him? You should look into that, Cal. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I will check it out.
Okay.
I'll check it out, and next time you join us, you'll have an answer, right?
Guess we'll have to talk to you again.
I'll do my best. I can't promise anything.
Telephone calls from the dead. Please tell us about that.
Well, telephone calls from the dead is still ongoing as research. So if anyone believes they've ever had one, please do get in contact. But it all came about from the fact that I read a lot of books by D. Scott Rogo and Raymond Bayless.
Mm-hmm.
Some very famous American parapsychologists from the West Coast, and they'd eventually collaborated on a book together called Phone Calls from the Dead. In 1979 they produced this, and it was an analysis of 50 cases of people having paranormal telephone calls, the majority of them being from the dead, so hence the title. But not all of them. There are some cases within that aren't paranormal. They're just that aren't from the dead. They are just considered paranormal. They shouldn't possibly have taken place, but it seems that they did. There's multiple witnesses to verify this unusual event, such as calling someone who isn't at home, and yet you would still get an answer from someone with their voice and characteristics and so forth. So my own book is basically a follow-up to that. Telephone Calls from the Dead, same title, I just added telephone. But it looks at another 50 cases and incorporating new kinds of technology. So there are some cases in there that probably occurred on a mobile phone. We look briefly at text messages and emails and how things have changed, really. And it was predicted by Raymond Bayless that as technology progresses, so will people's interpretation of paranormal phenomena with it. Right. And that seemed to be exactly the case. Nothing really seemed to have changed. In my analysis, I still found the same types of calls in terms of the characteristics reported by Rogo and Bayless that occurred in my sample as well. So we had these at least 4 different types of calls. Ones where you were in a state of bereavement and you would receive a very brief phone call from someone associated to be that dead person. It would just receive or relay, a voice or their name, or you would recognize their voice and it'd be mixed in with static. Another one would be you receive a phone call, speak to that person for half an hour or so, and then after the call realize that they died 24 hours beforehand or maybe a week, and you didn't know. Yeah. Third one, you could end up calling the dead and they would answer the phone, or someone that isn't dead but isn't home would still answer the phone. And then the 5th one in their study was intention calls. You intend to make a phone call, but the last minute you change your mind, but the time that you intended to make the call, that call still takes place and the person you intended to call still receives it, and yet you were off doing something else.
Parallel timelines, don't you think?
Sorry?
Parallel timelines.
Well, yeah, it's like chaos theory and the butterfly effect, and every action that we make creates a different path of reality. Yeah. In this, we're getting a very brief glimpse of this alternative path of reality from making a yes decision or a no decision. And this could be the same when we see apparitions and ghosts of living people in a building that they probably regularly go to, or in some cases, a building they intended to go to that day but never did. And this could explain that people... it is possible for these different paths of reality to briefly play out for other people to witness. And it's up to them to then get back to you for you to realize what's gone on and verify with other people saying, well, I was never there earlier today. You can't have seen me. And, some people might say it. They might have said, oh, I was down the shops. I was down the shopping mall today. I saw someone that I swear it was you. And you say, no, I was at home today.
I was planning on going, but I never made it.
Yeah. You get that all the time. Is it just the fact that you've got an absolute double walking about, or did someone actually see your apparition there? Who knows?
I've often wondered the theory about doppelgangers, and if you really do have a double walking around, just like there's an Alex too, you know.
And Alex too.
Yeah.
And a Cal too.
And a Cal too.
And a Cal too, yeah.
And unfortunately,
the second
Cal,
version of us everywhere.
Unfortunately,
It's
Cal,
10 o'clock,
yeah,
Cal.
we are completely out of time.
And you've got to be exhausted. It's
And
3 there.
I know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning for you.
Yeah, it's just coming up to 3.
I got to say, though, you don't look too tired.
No,
but,
I'm more of a night owl, though. Because
night owl, yeah.
I'm so used to haunting investigations. I spent